we start the show today, Pam, have you noticed the trend of, it seems to be more and more that people listen to something on their phone with no headphones? Like they'll have a game on, they'll have some show, some YouTube video, something, and they're just in the crowd and they just have it on full volume.
In the restaurant,
and they're just
in
listening.
the airport. Yes.
I'm coming out of Walmart and there's a lady sitting that's an employee right there at the door watching a show, no headphones. And it's just, we can all hear whatever it is she's watching at that moment.
If it's our show, we want them, everybody to listen.
I was going to give the little plug. If this is you, listen to this episode and do it loudly and proudly. We would love that, particularly this one. This one could be a little spicy with some of the topics and content we're going to cover today. But it's just an interesting how things have shifted.
Yeah.
It seems.
Yeah. Share it with those that need it. Others. Yeah.
Well, this is Sexy Marriage Radio, where we're trying to have honest, straightforward conversations, obviously about how we think life should be going. And what we think would be better for everybody. So put your headphones on, everybody.
Right. Put your headphones on. Come on. Everybody else doesn't want to listen to what you're listening to.
But what we're trying to do here with what we want you to listen to is things that will help increase the intensity of connection in your marriage and the depth and the spice and just how to face the problems and the struggles that we have. And what we want to know is what's going on with you. So you can let us know 214-702-9565 or feedback@sexymarriageradio.com. So coming up today on the regular version, probably the easiest way, we got 2 emails. And the easiest way to sum up the theme today is going to be looking at this through the lens of power as it pertains to oral sex.
Okay. All right. Because there is some power dynamic there. Okay.
There absolutely can be. And it may not be what people think based on the 2 emails that have come in. Because I think sometimes we think of that as, oh, okay, that makes sense. But maybe not. So that could be a lot of fun on this conversation. And on the extended content today, which is deeper, longer, and there are no ads, you can subscribe at smr.fm/academy is how you can find a way to join the Academy, which is a fantastic, shameless plug here, a group of people that are well worth hanging out with, spending time with. You can do it on a monthly or yearly level, or you can just get the extended content. But that gets you access to today's episode, where we're going to be talking about a man had emailed in because he's in between relationships. His prior marriage dissolved, and now he's in a new one, but he's got some concerns. There's a lot of connection that's really, really good, but she's noticeably more heavy than his template usually is, and drawn to, I guess.
And it's got him concerned.
And so he's got some concerns about, will that create a problem in my marriage? And so we're going to dive into that because that's a real thing we all face.
Yeah.
So all that's coming up right after this. So here's the first email. So we're going to take it from 2 different sides. Just based on 2 emailers that have come in. And so I've been a longtime listener of your show. This is from a wife, and I truly appreciate the open and honest conversations you foster about relationships and intimacy. It's comforting to know that there's a safe space to explore these topics, and I'm hoping you might be able to provide some insight into something I'm struggling with. I've been married to my husband for 18 years. We have a pretty good relationship. However, there's something in our intimate life that I find struggling to understand. I've noticed that I enjoy performing oral sex much more than traditional intercourse. This preference has been growing over time, and I can't help but wonder why. It's not that I don't enjoy the traditional sex, I do, but there's something about oral sex that feels more intimate and satisfying to me. I worry that this might affect our overall sexual connection, or that it might be a reflection of something deeper going on within me or our relationship. So have you encountered this topic before? Is this something other listeners have struggled with? I'd love to hear your thoughts and any advice that you may have to better understand how to navigate these.
So I don't see this as being too odd or weird or whatever she thinks it might be. I mean, just from my point of view, people have different aspects of sexual encounters that they like better than another.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody's template that we have as far as what is preferable and enjoyable in receiving or giving.
Yeah. Maybe this is something that makes her feel sexier, makes her feel more involved in the situation. I mean, tell me where you're coming from on this.
Yeah, I think that there's importance to recognize that everybody sees the different acts of sex through a different lens. Sometimes there's incredible joy and pleasure that comes from a certain aspect of it. Sometimes it's like, no, I'll do this more because I know my partner likes it.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes it's just like, well, yeah, this is just part of what we do,
Yeah.
So there's across the board, but there is an element. And that's why I wanted to, with this episode, look at this through the lens of power, because we've talked about this in the past. Because based on the way she's wording this and is curious, I'm going to go out on the limb to say that if she has had the courage to talk about this with any of her girlfriends, she's going to feel like an anomaly a little bit. Reason she's asking it, because it's like, shouldn't I enjoy it more traditionally? Isn't that what we're designed for? More just biologically speaking, isn't that what we're supposed to do for procreation?
Right. Right? Absolutely. I hear what you're saying.
So because of that fact, what's wrong with me? Right. So I can understand where that question comes from. And it is something I've had come across before with some clients when we've talked about this within the context of their relationship. And so that's why I like to think of this through the lens of power, because there is an aspect of the dynamic of offering up oral sex for your spouse. That's oftentimes a more power move.
And how does it create power?
Well, this is one of the things we've talked about in the past with the whole concept of oral sex. We've had wives in the past email in and say, I just can't, it feels demeaning. It feels, it's almost like I'm subjugating myself. I'm powerless. And so we've made the phrase, if you have a penis in your mouth, you're in a power position, actually, because you can do all kinds of things that are good or bad. So you have a lot of power that you have at your disposal in that moment, just as a way to reframe how you approach that aspect of your life and your sexuality with your spouse.
Yeah, if you frame it that way,
right.
Certainly, there's people that's not, they feel forced to do it, and that doesn't feel like power at all.
No, absolutely. And so that's why you have to keep it in the context of what is it that's this specific question that she's asking. I think if we can look at it through the lens of power as to why she might enjoy it.
Well, I think it can be an aspect of, I feel really sexy doing this, right? If this is something I like to do and I want to do for my spouse, that can be an avenue to really feel, well, I was about to use the word power.
That's where I wanted to land, because I think you're kind of seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like I have this way to woo my spouse. And
I think there's a fundamental thing, to interrupt you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a fundamental aspect of humans in marriage, in their sex lives, that a lot of times there is a component of, I really love knowing I have the power to provide pleasure to my mate. That is a powerful thing.
Well, knowing I can tease them with it, knowing there's positions I can get in when oral sex is being performed on him that make me feel even sexier than there's some avenues I can see where there's some positions you can get in that would make you feel less than.
Sure. Well, to some people, to others, it could be, no, that's a power position.
And a lot of this is history. What is your history in the sexual arena and with your spouse, and how they make you feel when you're doing this together?
Right.
So the spouses, keep in mind what your verbal and nonverbal functions and body movements are saying to your spouse when they're doing this. But I just don't think that it's a terrible thing to want to do this more than you do intercourse. No, and maybe he needs to learn, you both need to learn some other things on intercourse if that's not as fun for you.
Well, okay. So some of this comes down to the fact of what's his preference. Is he upset with this or doesn't, or I'm good with this? I mean, we can do intercourse every so often, and we're more of the oral pleasing of each other.
Yeah.
Assuming he enjoys the receiving and the giving as well. Since she's asking the question of, I'm trying to understand myself in this.
Okay.
The reason I'm landing on the idea of power is I'm curious, does she have areas where she feels like she has power and areas in her life where she feels like she doesn't? Because I think we all suffer from this. There's some aspects of my life I feel incredibly confident and vibrant and powerful. And then there's some others I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And so if you can look at it across the spectrum of my life, where do I display more of a power stance? And maybe I'm lacking in some areas, so I make up for it here. And I think some of that's human, because I don't think we can be all powerful in every situation on every aspect of my life. There's always going to be areas of like, not so sure about this one.
Yeah.
I'm kind of checking it out. And then I can grow into power maybe on that, because all of us have done this in areas too. So the same goes for her relationship, the power dynamic. Does she have power in her relationship? Because if it's lacking in a lot of ways, this is an easy way to kind of claim it. Look at the control I can have in our marriage. The point of this to me is recognizing, how do I get this out in the open? Because then it's less likely going to be manipulative and plays that are demeaning or detrimental to each other.
Okay.
Right?
That
Because
makes sense.
we can do that. I mean, that's that banter that you and I can have. And we've talked about this in the past, where is it okay? I think somebody even emailed in. Is it okay to offer sexual favors to get things done around the house? And it's like the idea of, if it's out in the open and it's playful and you both are agreeing upon it, have fun. It's when it's covert, that's when it becomes really problematic. Well, power's the same way. When it's covert in the ways I'm trying to get it, that's the worst in me oftentimes leading that charge more than the best in me. And so the other aspect and question I have for her is, when you look at your own sexuality, ma'am, your journey as a sexual creature, where has power been at play in it? Where have you found power? Where have you been striving for it? Where have you not found it? And it's just better. It's just a good way to, I think, understand my sexual journey. And I can start to see, because there are some women that love the power they have as being a woman, because it'll draw attention, and they're noticed, and they love that. And there's other women that absolutely hate it.
Sure.
Right? I mean, I can think of several on both ends of that continuum.
Sure.
And the only thing different is the meaning they attach to that aspect of their sexuality and creation. So if she wants to explore this more, I think she starts to look, she needs to look through it, through that lens, and just see where that takes her. The whole ultimate goal becomes, be clean about it. I have this prowess. I have this enjoyment. I love it. So just be out in the open about it. Be up front with him about it.
Yeah.
And if he wants something else, then you have the opportunity to have the power play coming back at you, and you have to navigate on a different plane with each other, which that's
Fair.
where it can get really, really good.
Yeah.
Because we've had times in the way back when I used to do Blow Up My Marriage, which was the course that I originally created back when it was Simple Marriage and just much more of a blog.
The early days
Early
of
days
your
of
online
online,
presence. Yes.
And I remember one of the coaching calls that was going on during that was a husband and wife were both on the call, and we were using the concept of a captain and first officer. And so I think it was her said, well, what do you do when we're both captains? And like, okay, so it's a captain trying to out captain another captain. Well, that can be really, really conflictual. Or if you look at it where there's abundance and there's equal power available for all, then that becomes a different kind of energy.
Collaboration.
Right. It becomes okay, now we both try to show up and learn the ebb and flow of what we can do, what I enjoy, what you enjoy, and we navigate through it. Because power also includes not using it, even though you can.
Very good point.
So let's move on to the other side of this equation. This is another email that came in that said, first off, I've been listening for a couple of years now, and I've learned a lot and have incorporated a lot of the topics. Been married to my wife for 16 years. We have 4 kids. Both of us had some sexual trauma about 25 years ago. I was addicted to porn and other forms and had other forms of abuse when I was younger too. We've both grown through our problems, and now we serve in our church, and we even help other couples with some of their marital issues. We have a pretty decent and frequent sex life, but I'm struggling with an issue. I would like to receive oral sex pleasure from my wife more often. Since we've been married, I might receive it once a year, twice if I force it through bondage play. But it is something that frustrates me, and I don't know if I should be frustrated or I should just let it go. She says she doesn't like to do it, and she doesn't want to do it, even though I try to suggest it's not about her pleasure, but rather it's my pleasure, and I would like her to see that she would do something to please her man. Before I sound horrible, I want to say that I perform oral sex almost every time we have sex. Not only that, we've worked through the issues of using toys to give her orgasms, so we use one every time during sex as well, because I want her to be pleased, and what that makes me pleased to do that. Not to mention, she's wanted to try bondage, spanking, dirty talk, and toys, which has been extremely uncomfortable and difficult to do, but I got over my discomforts because I love pleasing my wife. Dirty talk was even brought up in a promise that I would receive more oral sex every time I used or said something. But she's neglected to even make good on it once. I don't necessarily even need to come. I would just love her to fondle, stroke, lick, suck, use toys, something, almost anything she refuses to do because she doesn't like to. Honestly, we've talked about this multiple times, and nothing seems to make her understand that I would like to feel loved by her doing something that just pleases me without having to always do everything she desired. I guess what I'm asking is, am I being selfish for not wanting my wife to do these things when I know she doesn't want exactly like to do them? I'm looking for guidance so I don't become resentful of the always trying new things for her while getting nothing in return but only once a year. I was watching your facial reactions while I'm reading that.
Well, before he talked about some of the other things they got into, the wording, I think the wording threw me off here. Because he said that she'll perform oral sex once, maybe twice a year, and the second time would only be forced
during bondage play.
Use the word forced during bondage play. And anytime anything is forced, that's certainly, I would think, would be red flags to anybody.
Well, fair, except for when it's in the context of the BDSM world. And so that's where they need to have the conversation of, is that something that's helping him? Ultimately, is she something that even when it's bondage play and there is a little power differential going on of dominant and submissive? Because a lot of times the person that wants to be dominated wants to be told what to do, and they are supposed to do it.
And he's making it sound like she's the one that wants this.
Right. Wants the bondage play. And so he can use that aspect to try to get what it is he's wanting. And so but he's not really into that side of things. Yes. And so they both are coming at it from a detrimental, this isn't exactly what I like, but maybe I can get something I want out of it. And so there's an undercurrent in this.
It's a recipe for something that I don't know what the end result is.
Yeah. There's an undercurrent in this that is problematic because they're both in some ways really making power moves that aren't collaborative.
Yeah.
Right. They're both trying to get what they want while dangling out what I do or what I wish to be able to get what it is they want. And so it's much more collusive and then likely even more combative, because here's the couple phrases, because that was one that jumped out to me too when I first saw the email a couple weeks ago. I was like, whoa, and then read on like, okay, that makes sense if you put it in context. I don't want to get hung up on that. While that could be a factor, absolutely, and that needs to be addressed. But if you look at it the entirety, that's where I want to land for the rest of the segment.
Okay,
is starting to see it as he has a tremendous amount of this whole quid pro quo thing going on. I do all these things for you.
Do it for me.
Therefore, you owe me. Marriage does not exist on a quid pro quo level to where it's beneficial to both people. It does exist, but it's usually a life-sucking killjoy for both people ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Because there's so much covert contracts. There's so many undercurrent manipulative moves with strings attached. And that right there in and of itself means predominantly that marriage isn't based on love. It's based on convenience. It's based on family. It's based on everything else that can be a part of a relationship, because there are all kinds of dynamics that make up a marriage. So I'm not trying to bash and say you guys don't love each other. Just saying this aspect of this gridlock issue means you have to face, how are you going about trying to get what it is you want?
Mm-hmm.
Because the other thing that jumped out to me is I just want her to understand what this means to me. And what I'm hearing in this is she maybe understands what it means to him, but she's stuck with, does he understand what it means to me? They both can take that same stance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't enjoy it. I don't want to be a part of it.
But I want it.
Right. And that's what he's saying. So it's just this dilemma that they truly have, that they both are looking to the other to solve, rather than what's being exposed in me here. What is it I'm so dead set on? It has to happen this way, or I really do want this, or because you go to great lengths. So in essence, he's stuck with this big two-choice dilemma of, I either have to learn how to operate in ways that I think are beneficial for her, knowing it may or may not come in return, or I need to make the same power move she makes.
Is there one of those avenues that's better than the other?
The first one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because at least then it starts to be more overt on, you're coming to grips with, okay, I've got strings attached to this. Do I want to be a husband that does enjoy offering pleasure to his wife, even in ways that I have to grow in? Because every time it's done and then there's a string attached to it, what's that message sent to her? It's usually not this, I'm all about you, babe. Even though in the moment we'll say that's what it is. But in the back of your mind, you know it's not true completely.
Yeah.
And so they're stuck with this dilemma of, I do all these different things and I don't want to become resentful because I'm always trying new things and I'm stretching and growing. And I'm going to sit here and say, I don't know if you're really stretching and growing. It's a different level of, frankly, manipulation.
Yeah. To ultimately get what you want.
Mm-hmm. Which at face value, we want what we want in life, right? I mean, we all...
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with desiring this aspect of your sexual relationship with your spouse.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. You just may not always get what it is you want.
Yes.
And then you got to deal with that step.
And he needs to recognize the way he's going about this is trying to think of this as it's a puzzle that can be unlocked and she'll figure it out. Rather than the puzzle that needs to be unlocked is you, sir, and how you are going about what it is you're seeking. Because you can still I'm not saying give up on what you want in your marriage, but I am saying, how do you go about living life that's more vibrant and giving in the ways you want to give, and you see what comes in return?
I mean, is there anything wrong with him if he's not into the bondage piece that she's into, backing off from that?
Well, no, I think that's just where you start to get a little more genuine.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference, and this is where it becomes really interesting. Because a lot of times people might hear this and think, and we need to probably unpack this even further in a future show. So feedback at sexymarriageradio.com if this is not landing right or you're kind of confused with it. But there's this element of, ultimately, for a relationship to grow beyond these kinds of levels that we often can be at. You and I have been at these levels on different aspects of our marriage at different times too, where it's power plays, it's covert, it's I'm waiting for you to change, you're waiting for me to change. You know,
sure.
It's so to ultimately grow beyond that, we have to grow to a point personally, individually, to where he can look her in the eye and say, you know what, baby, I know full well what you don't want to do. There's things you don't like that I really do enjoy. And there's things I'm wanting to grow and stretch so that, because I know you enjoy them. And so I'm going to keep going down that path. and I want to keep trying to grow because I think it's just better for me. And I'm releasing you from having to do anything with me in that regard. I want it. I love it, but I want it to be your choice. That's one way. And it's very, very simple to say, incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the message he's trying to send in some ways. But it's not landing that way because he's not truly to that point of releasing it. To say in the back of his mind, it could be, you know what? I'm willing to do this. This lands more. Let me pivot just slightly, see if this makes it kind of land as we end this segment. I see this more in the realm of a sexless marriage or verbally abusive marriages.
Okay.
Or cold and distant marriages.
Okay.
Of, you know what, honey, I'm not counting on you to be there for me and show up emotionally to carry your weight and as a mate that I would really hope for. Because we've had this power play back and forth. And so I'm kind of releasing you from that. I'm going to continue to work on myself, and it'll come clean and true if you are around or not. as I keep growing and evolving, because we ultimately have to get to points where, what am I willing to tolerate and adjust, or what am I continually trying to make my partner tolerate and adjust for me? That's the tension of marriage. And too often I put all of it on my spouse, rather than the only thing I can control is me. And if I start to live that way better, it's a cleaner pressure between you then. Because it's not that she doesn't know.
Oh, yeah. She absolutely knows there's that tension there. She knows she's not fulfilling what he wants.
She knows what he likes and wants, but is not willing to address that in herself. And so she can continue to be slippery and not address it. Because even if she played the card of, if you would talk more dirty, there'd be more oral sex happening. She knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So this is about facing the spouse you have, not the one you wish they were. And when you can do that, it's scary as can be, but it's really the only way through it, because you have to then come to grips with, wait, this isn't worth leaving over. So I've got it, because this is him having to face, I don't want these resentments. Well, as long as you put all the focus on her, you're going to have these resentments.
Yeah.
The way you deal with resentments is you come to the grips with yourself of realizing I can be who I am and want to be, and not hold my spouse responsible for how they respond. Because I want to be a person that gives. I want to be a person that loves. I want to be a person that shares or stretches and grows sexually or whatever it might be. And when you can do that, it's a better way to live, because you're then no longer holding your spouse responsible for, do they respond in kind or not? You adjust and address if they do or don't.
Doesn't mean you have to like it if they don't respond the way you want. You still have to take that on yourself.
Right.
But it's more taken on you as opposed to taken on.
And that's where this
them.
has been flipped, because the power and the way he's framed this is she has it all and she hasn't given any of it towards him, rather than he has to take it back for himself to decide, when it comes to this aspect of my marriage, is oral sex all that powerful and the ultimate, or have I made it such because I'm not getting it? Well, what if you pivot it a little bit and you see, because you learn who are you in the way you are operating in your sex life in your marriage. And if you like that guy, continue to be that guy. And then address, who's the wife you're with? Because it can be the statements, yeah, I'm disappointed. I was hoping for that. I'm disappointed. But there's nothing else that's vindictive or vengeful or spiteful or petty. It's just, you just acknowledge, that's something I would like for, but I'm trying to grow better beyond that. That's a different pressure then.
It is.
And then you see, because she may think, oh, phew, finally. But if he continues doing that and she's paying attention, which this email says she is, she'll notice. And then you see what happens.
She'll feel the pressure, but it comes from you in a non-manipulative way, right?
It's a better way.
It's a better way. It's a grown-up way to do it.
Right. Which that's what we're all trying to do. Is let's just tackle the problems and the stressors and the pressures we have in marriage as grown-ups.
Yeah.
And then we can figure out what our next step is.